Well, welcome to Market of the Moment. I'm Sharon Terhune, the Vice President and Sales Manager for Fidelity National Title. I wish I could say I'm joined today by Mr. Don Tchaikovsky, our Director of Channel Sales, but as you can see, I'm sitting here solo. So let me check and call him real quick and see where Don is. Hold tight. Hey, we're like filming. Like, where are you? Are you coming? Oh, okay, great. Awesome. All right. Okay, I will give that update. That's great. Thanks, Don. All right, guys. Well, this is great news, actually. Don is offset, and he is actually with a gentleman. His name is Nathan Wente with Wente Law. And Nathan and Don are talking about the value of estate planning, which is phenomenal, and I'm so excited to hear what they have to say. So let's go ahead and tune in and see all about estate planning today.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it, and I am excited to introduce Nathan Wente of Wente Law. And I was at an event recently, Nathan. Well, first, thank you for making the time to be here today. Yeah. I was recently at an event, and Nathan was speaking about estate planning and about the importance of that in a family's dynamics and making sure that things are taken care of. We're all not going to be here forever, so it's good to have a strategy and a plan for what happens when we're not here anymore. So Nathan, can you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then maybe hit a little bit about that conversation you were having with that group the other day?
Yeah. So estate planning is critically important. Everyone really should have an estate plan, and it's more than just what happens to my stuff when I'm gone. It's much more impactful, and I think people don't understand that if they haven't created their own estate plan, then there's state law that comes in that the government has created one for you. And so whether you like it or not, there's an estate plan, and I think most people wouldn't approve of the one that is there by default. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. That's and I appreciate that. So when somebody is evaluating, there's different people in different parts of their life, right? Like their financial securities are different, their health is in different positions, So what would you say to who is it that it's important to do estate planning with? And so most of our audiences are people that are in the real estate industry. And so advising their clients about this as well, I think is important. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So honestly, anyone who has loved ones or has assets that aren't just easily transferable, assets that aren't easily transferable, like, I give you this mug, right? Things beyond that have title, that, maybe it's controlled by an outside financial institution. Those are things that tend to be more problematic upon the death of whoever was in control of that. So people who have assets like that, critically important to have an estate plan. We can, set up trusts and things like that so that assets upon your death or your incapacity, it's much easier to transfer those to people upon your death or incapacity than it would otherwise be if they weren't in a trust. People who have young children that want to have a say in what is going to happen to my children if something were to happen to me. We can help give them some control over that equation when the worst should happen, which we hope it doesn't.
Right.
But we always want to have a plan in place that makes sure that those things are put into play. What we don't want to do is get in a situation where there's not a plan, because again, that default plan kicks in. And that's kind of a bad spot, or could be a bad spot for your children, especially if you have contentious family relationships. I mean, that things can get ugly. I don't want to burden this discussion with all the ugliness, but those are some of the things that need to be paid attention to.
So when it comes to the real estate transaction, it was interesting because as you did this presentation, and we go to this same group of people every week, and different people present, and I've never seen as many questions at the end of a presentation. And it's not because you didn't do a thorough presentation; it's just it stirred so many things in people's minds and questions. And so most of my questions were around the real estate business,
right?
And so when somebody if you're a first-time buyer buying a house, and maybe you're coming up in life, you're starting a young family, all this stuff. So would it be important to talk to an estate planner before you actually make that purchase, or does it matter if they do after they purchase, or what would that be?
I think it's important to do it before. Real estate transactions, anyone who has bought a home or is in that business, can often be chaotic. You've got timelines that you're pushing up against, and sometimes you're getting emails multiple a day and offers going back and forth and this and that. It's going to be more stressful and more difficult for a person to also field estate planning issues in that. So I would recommend communicating beforehand. If not, if that hasn't been done, and you find yourself to be a person in that scenario where, hey, maybe you're already in that process, should you do it now? The answer, I think, is yes. And one of the reasons is because, if a person takes title purely in their name, then in all likelihood, that home is going to have to go through a court proceeding upon their death in order to get it to somebody who they want to have it. So there are some caveats to that I don't think are necessary to discuss here, but most cases that's going to be the scenario. And that court proceeding isn't fun. I mean, court isn't fun. I mean, take it from somebody who's been in and out of court for over 15 years, it's not fun. Yeah. Even as a lawyer, it's not fun. So, so that's an important process. And not only that, not only just the titling of the home. Arizona, we're a community property state here. I know we have a lot of people that move into Arizona from outside the state. My belief is there's only 9 or 10 states, I don't know this number for sure, but it's definitely the minority of states in the United States that are community property states. And there are some differences when you're taking title with community property in a community property state, that these people coming from out of the state, they may have never heard of it, they don't know what it means, and a person who thinks that maybe they're buying a home that's going to be theirs, surprise, maybe it won't be. And so I think the education for that is important too. That discussion can happen with an estate planner, where I don't think those discussions are happening between buyers or potential buyers and their real estate agents or their title companies or their mortgage loan officers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, and that's what I can tell you. We try not, we can't advise in those things. When somebody comes in one of our offices to sign, that's not something we can advise them. We can say, okay, this is what this means, but we can't go into like advising what they should do. So I think it's really important that they have somebody like you to have that conversation with, so they can make sure that their wishes are going to be followed through with. And that, as somebody who's been through some rough family stuff around a loss, that that you don't want to have that if you can avoid it. So so what about that person who's maybe doing investment properties and maybe owns entities that then own properties? What would the value for them be in working with an estate planner?
Yeah, I think the biggest value is it kind of falls along the same lines as what a individual is. It's easier to transfer those assets into control of other people, like an LLC, right? You have an LLC, you can change the leadership in that LLC easier than perhaps you could change title to a piece of property or account ownership from individual to individual. Well, we can also put business organizations can be in control of a trust, can be in a trust that's then controlled by a trustee, or you can have a business entity be in control of a trust as well. There's more flexibility when it comes to these things, and there's a lot of what's the better word? It sounds more complicated, but when you have a death or when you have an incapacitated person, it simplifies the process of the moving in and out and in the control features, I think. So what about when somebody has established a trust, right? And they've gone through and they've created this trust, and but things change in their life.
And so they either acquire new property, or they sell property, or they acquire a new business. So things change. Do those things automatically go into that trust?
No, they don't. You have to actually be proactive in making sure things that you take title to go into the trust. It's not just going to happen because you want it to. Things like property, real property is where it matters. People can put vehicles in trusts. They can put accounts, bank accounts, stock accounts, retirement accounts in trust, life insurance. Those things can all go into the trust. Just because you say that that's what you want to have happen, you could create a document that says, well, I want my account to be held in the trust. That document by itself is not going to actually make it happen. There's other things that have to happen with a piece of property. The deed actually has to be recorded giving title to the trust. Life insurance policies have to be, specified that specifically says, okay, the beneficiary of this life insurance policy is the trust. So it's more official than just, okay, I'm going to write on a piece of paper, I want this in the trust.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, and I'm going to kind of challenge with you because you put up a graphic when we were in that group, and it was about people who, like, when they're within a state that there's no will at all, no trust, right? And there was a bunch of information about like the cost, whether you have to go to court, whether all these things. And it was if there is a will, and because a lot of people feel like, oh, I've got a will and that covers everything, right? And then there was information about how that's impacted in the financials around all that, whether it could be contested, and then whether something was in a trust. Can you do like a brief summary on like kind of what the differences between those three things are?
Yeah, so the graphic you're talking about, in the one column, it was kind of laying out the progression or the issues that were related if somebody had no estate plan in place, and we call that dying intestacy. It requires probate court upon the person's death if there's any assets that they need to transfer in and out. There's going to be court costs affiliated with that. There's going to be attorney fees affiliated with that. You have to send out notices to basically anybody that may have a claim to that person's estate. And so there is way less control and much more tasks and more headache really for your loved ones. I mean, estate planning really at the heart of it is it's for your loved ones, right? Yeah. You're deceased, right. So you're making other people's lives harder by not having an estate plan. So that was the first column. It's all red in my view. No estate plan is all red things, all more headache. Okay?
One of the things I'm sorry not to interrupt, but one of the things that was the expense around all that too, right?
Yes.
There's a huge expense around all that. And when people look at the cost of what it costs to have an estate plan, it's far less when you've got, in most cases, than it's going to be to have a plan.
Yes, and one of the reasons I think that's true is because when there is no plan, it leaves more opportunity for people to fight about it, and that's a big cost. I mean, fighting about stuff.
Yeah.
After someone's dead,
right.
How many people are getting attorneys, and attorney fees are going way up. So yeah, it's much more expensive. Maybe not in every estate, but the cost, the potential of it going up rises very quickly. And then of course there was the middle column with someone has a will. Where there's a will, there's more control. The decedent has kind of put their plan in place, and this is where they want this to go, and this is who they want to make those decisions. So it gives less things to fight about, but it still requires court. So there's still the cost associated with filing a probate case, and then you still probably, unless you're going to do it yourself, you're probably going to be hiring an attorney to do that. And so those costs are still higher. And then of course there's the trust, which if a person has a properly funded trust, there wouldn't be a need to go to probate court, in which case it removes a lot of that potential contention. And there's still costs associated with that, but in my view and in my experience, the costs are less in that scenario. But I will say, having said that, it doesn't always make sense for everyone to get a trust.
Right. Right. Okay. Excellent. Nathan, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. If you would like more information or would like to get in contact with Nathan, we're going to have his information here on the moment market of the moment right here. Should be right across the bottom. Hopefully, we get that edited in there, and or reach out to Sharon or myself, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with Nathan. So thank you so much for being here. And Sharon, we're going to kick it back over to you, and you take it away.
Wow. Gosh, Don and Nathan, thank you so much for that incredible update.
Wait. Hold on. Wait. Hold on. I'm here.
Did you fly here or what happened?
You know, Sharon, I do. I don't want to miss any camera time. So.
Well, here he is,
yeah,
Don.
yeah.
He's in person. I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like flying solo that much on these things.
We did a great job, and thank you for covering for me for a little bit.
You bet.
But as you know, I like to be in front of the camera as much as I can. So here I am. So,
there's definite truth to that statement there, right there. I love it.
And Nathan, thank you so much for doing that interview with us. You know, it's so relevant to the real estate industry, and as we're helping our buyers and sellers and planning through what they're doing and what their future looks like.
Yeah.
It's such a big piece of it all. So
that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I love hearing that stuff. It's really out of the box thinking of different ways to do things.
For sure.
Great stuff.
So now that we've covered that, I think we should go and check it with Market Master Mindy.
Okay.
And Mindy, if you can give us the latest and the greatest of what's happening out there in the real estate industry, we would love to hear it.
Year-over-year stats are finally speaking to our current state of the market now that we're past the frenzied years of 21 and 22, where inflated numbers inaccurately represented our gains and falls from a normal market, making it very difficult for consumers to grasp just where we stood. The friction points are easing up in conversations with buyers and sellers as we're starting to see an uptick in new listings coming to market, something that you won't see reflected in the numbers quite yet, giving buyers and sellers an unfair advantage if they have a local real estate professional to lean on. Inventory is finally accurately reflecting our nearly 30% drop year over year and nearly 40% from the peak in our 2022 inventory, pushing some off the sidelines as they realize this inventory shortage is likely here to stay and likely to continue creating upward pressure on pricing because of it. Sales prices are down about 5% from our peak last year, but up almost 7% since December, meaning that any deals buyers were able to get in the latter half of 2022 are once again gone, and pricing is stabilizing at a faster than normal rate of incline. The majority of this momentum was seen in the first half, and while we expect prices to continue to increase through the end of the year, we do expect that it will happen at a more modest rate. Nearly half of all contracts signed in June contain seller concessions, which is a major win for buyers who can use these funds to buy down their interest rates. But don't worry, sellers, you too have a good shake of the deal, with homes over $1 million seeing their third best season ever recorded and prices rising across all segments. The sense of urgency to do something is here for most people, but the question is, how will you get it done?
Thank you so much, Mindy, for your incredible update. As always, love your enthusiasm for the market and all your great knowledge. So thank you for being here every week with a market update for us on Market of the Moment. So Don, should we pivot over to Amber Kovarik with Guild Mortgage and hear about what's going on in the mortgage world? What do you think?
Indeed we shall.
Okay.
What do we got going on, Amber?
Hey, Amber Kovarik here. Did you know that consumer credit card debt is at an all-time high again? Through the pandemic with the stimulus checks, we saw the credit card balances go down, and then we saw consumers get used to spending this extra money, and it has continued. It is a problem right now, especially because we have seen inflation cause the cost of goods and services to go up, with the Fed rate hikes also impacting these credit card interest rates. Also, we have seen car loan payments double over the last 3 years. The average car payment was $400, is now $800 a month, and the term of these car loans have gone from 5 years to 6 years over that same period of time. A crazy statistic is that 17% of car payments are $1,000 or more per month. Why I say all of this is because you may know someone who's in a position where they're feeling tight with their finances due to this impending debt. And right now, the average homeowner has a 42% loan to value on their home, meaning on average they have $185,000 of equity they could tap into. The opportunity right now could be to do a cash out refinance where we pull some funds out of that home equity to pay off that consumer debt. The interest rate is going to be higher than what they likely have on their current mortgage. But when we look at the overall liabilities going down due to the debt reduction, the savings can be tremendous. And the kicker is, we'll carry this loan for 6, 9 months, however long it takes for interest rates to come down. And then when we see them drop, we'll refinance that person. And on that refinance, it's going to be what's called a rate and term refinance. That will give them the best interest rate for the longevity of the mortgage. So the plan right now for anyone who wants some relief from credit card debt is to do a cash out refinance, pay off the debt, wait until interest rates drop, then do a rate and term refinance to get the best rate for the length of the mortgage. If you know of anyone who could use this information, or if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We are here to help. Thanks.
Amber, thank you so much. We appreciate your information every week, and you know the how to pay for the house is important as finding the right house. So,
absolutely, and having a mortgage officer that actually knows what they're doing for getting creative. So that's
for
important.
Sure. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. Nathan, thank you again, and we'll see you guys next week.
Ciao.